I want to start this talk with a conversation about my grandma, Precious Davis. Isn't she so precious? Um, my grandmother used to play the numbers every week. The number man would come to our house, sit there, talk to her, collect her money. And it would go a little something like this. She'd say, "Henry, I dreamed of the ocean last night. That means it's big and wide. I'm gonna hit big. Play these numbers." And then she'd give a series of numbers. That continued week after week. One day I got fed up and I was just like, "Grandma, you really gotta stop, right? You are not winning." She looked at me and she said, "I don't know what you're talking about because I am winning. It's the little wins, the little $200, the little wins." I didn't understand and I got even more frustrated. So I went and grabbed a pen and paper and I said, "Well, how much money are you giving weekly?" And we went down and I did the math and I said, see, you're losing, you're negative. You're actually not even getting the money back that you put in. The math ain't mathing. Reality is you need to save your money and you need to invest. She looked at me and she said, "Well, whose reality is that?" But furthermore, she said, "What will change about my life if I took these little couple of dollars and put it in an investment account and saved it? What would change so much about my life, Miss Tiffany?" That's what she called me when she was trying to tell me I'm a know-it-all. And she said, "Furthermore, who said I want to change anything about my life? Like, who said that?" She said I needed to mind my business and worry about my own life and leave hers alone. And I contemplated going back and forth with her, but then I realized she got 70 plus years on me. I was 20-something at the time. And one thing I know to be true, growing up in a household with an elder Black woman, you will not win this argument. Anybody grew up in a house with an elder or a grandma? But the real question is, have you grew up in a house with a Black elder and a Black great auntie? Einstein ain't got nothing on them. This experience was crucial to my work because it really forced me to think about evidence and evidence-based, right? We go back to the math. I'm like, look at the math, negative. It's evident that you're losing. And how we determine what is evidence. Mr. Evidence-based is what I call it. We had a love-hate relationship because I started my career really in social policy. I worked for a United States Senator. I was trained in quant. I was running these regressions over and over. I was like, disparity significant. But something just didn't feel right. I didn't have the language. It didn't feel right. And I get frustrated, and I just keep going. My grandmother gave me the most important lesson in my job as a research scientist. She taught me what epistemology is and what ontology is. And she taught me without a fancy degree. Epistemology, the study of knowledge and the way we receive and get knowledge. Ontology, the study, a philosophy of being and reality. The question I ask myself is, whose ontology is recognized as epistemology in my work, and in social work, and in social policy? I asked this question because my body was telling me something than my mind. My body was saying, "This ain't it, sis." And then it was coming out as a tantrum. But my mom was like, "This is how you were trained. You went to Penn, run the thing." Like, everybody's expecting this. And then one day it clicked. I walked into Dr. Courtney Cogburn's office. She was not my faculty. I didn't even go to Columbia. But I saw her work, and I sat down, and I was talking to her about my frustrations. I'm like, and I'm whispering, I'm like, "I think I'm crazy, right?" And she looked at me, she's like, "You ain't crazy." I said, "So this is really happening? Like, how do I study this?" She said, "It doesn't exist." I said, so what I'm gonna spend my career doing? I already signed up for this doctoral program. I don't care. She was like, you gotta go create it. And I'm like, well, what exactly is the it? And what exactly is happening before I can even understand? What I realized when I sat down, because I think critical reflection is key, and really sat with myself and said, well, what is actually happening? I was able to understand the structure of knowledge. This is an image curated by Dr. Ria Alameda. I use it in my class. I use it to ground my work with my students to start to see, right, what is happening. I was trained to think about knowledge from the top down. Go to the textbook, you read empirical, you produce. Basically, what I realized is in disparity work, there's always a comparison. And that's the part we're not talking about. So we are technically comparing the people at the top to the people at the bottom. And what I realized, what I was positioned to do was get those people at the bottom to get what the people at the top have. Over and over and over again, the gap. Because the gap says that there's a goal. What exactly is the goal? That was the question I was asking. And when I realized that, I got clear that the goals we centered were whiteness, patriarchy, coloniality, and heteronormativity. That the way we looked at family structures, when I would say, well, how do you define family here? And economists look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, you're crazy. Like, how do we define it? But furthermore, I realized, using my policy brain, that this economy, this structure was designed this way. Like, it is the container. We built this structure in our economy on stolen land, on the exploitation of Black labor, and the exclusion of women. Period. And so we will continue to breed the same outcome because that's how it was designed. That gave me freedom and also pissed me off. Because when I realized what was happening in my education, it got me really upset. Because how is it that we are studying the same things over and over, significant same studies, and no one's saying, well, of course it's this way. Let's think about something new. How is it? How did we get there? And how are we training students not to even think about their positionality in standpoint theory? That you curate knowledge from where you are on the hierarchy too, period. It is not objective, it is from where you are and what you know. And that's our good news. Because if we can reckon with that, I can say in my study, Black children, Black women, Latin children, indigenous people. But what we never say is white people, white kids, white men, white women. Because we hold whiteness as the standard. And now we constructed all these measurements, and we are literally not doing same outcome. Black children, we don't live white children's lives. We lived in a racialized society. And guess what? Whiteness is also racialized. So I had work to do, right? I had work to do. And it started when I met my chair, Dr. Selena T. Rogers, who, in the beginning, it was a love-hate relationship. Because she pushed me. I'm like, I'm gonna do this regular quant study, I'm gonna And she was like, no. Not no, she just asked me more questions, I get frustrated, come back. She added 2 more years onto my degree. But I'm grateful. She asked me, who are you serving, and what exactly are you looking at? And do you wanna spend your career dismantling? Something that really can't be dismantled just with those are the questions. So I thought about what I wanted to build in my work, and I decided that I wanted to build a data bank called Liberation for Us, because the only way to get to liberation, we have to actually center us, meaning that we actually have to decide what outcomes we want. My grandmother was telling me she liked to play the numbers. She said she can't save her way out of this. She was 70. And to me, with an Ivy League degree, I thought that was crazy, because I was trained to think, save, invest, in the end. And she said, that's not gonna get me nowhere. And this is also my investment. So I wanna spend my career literally sitting down with people and talking about, well, what brings you joy? What's peace for you? How do you define what wealth is and economic security? Tell me what health means to you so that we can construct measurements and tools that actually center the people it's trying to serve, while at the same time, other people, those other folks, are gonna be in the world dismantling. Because I'm clear that we still have to do that. But the question is, how come we can't do both and? So when I think about my research, I always ask myself some critical questions, like in my head. I ask, whose ontology is determining which epistemologies are held as valuable? So I'm literally stopping, I'm getting off of the research train. I ask, what is the root of my research question and idea? Where did this question come from? We love to say it's objective, but where the question came from? Out of my brain, out of my head as a human being. And why did I get to this question? Because I know that Black women, in my experience, don't think about this in this way. So therefore, the question I want to ask is, and look at the gap. What does this proposed research center, or who? Who benefits from this? Am I measuring something to something? What's the goal, and who determined the goal? When we're looking at the disparity in the gap, it's the number, cool, but then what's the goal? Are we gonna have the same amount of access as white households? Not in this system and structure, because we did not build it in that way. So first we have to acknowledge that. And then we have to say, well, given this, now what? Because we never gave the money back or the land. And that's the work. What am I holding as objective and standard? My students would get me. I go on my mini rants in class about this. Tell me what objectivity is. Oftentimes people start, I'm being neutral, I'm not biased. I said, no, hold that you are biased, now what? Because it's in the power of acknowledging I only can see the world through my eyes as a Black woman that I'm able to engage and say, hey, this is why I see it this way. And also understand that the other person on the other end sees it a different way. So the people who are reading my research have to know that. They have to know that this is where I'm coming from. These questions literally slowed me down, had me decide what I wanted. And I heard Dr. Cogburn saying it today. I was like, oh, I remember saying, well, I don't think I'm gonna be in 10 years. And then I was like, well, what's the goal? The goal is you owe it to the people in the Bronx. You know better. I was telling one of my best friends, Diana, I was like, I think about if like my neighbor read this, she'd be like, mm-mm. And so because of that, I don't publish it. I will not, it's unethical for me. And that means that maybe there won't be this large amount of research, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I want to end with my grandma, because we started with her. I think my grandma gave me some precious gems. She died in 2015 when I was graduating from the University of Pennsylvania School of Social Policy and Practice. It was when I actually had to decide who I was gonna be, because I understood who I was in white spaces. So first I was always gonna be Black, and first I was always in the binary, right? But I was always gonna be truthful, because that's what I got from elders. You live with an elder, they just tell the truth. Ain't no reason to lie. That you be truthful and gracious, and you hold space. But the last thing, and the most important thing I learned, was to ask, whose ontology are you centering, Tiffany? Because to center folks' ontology and epistemology is to acknowledge their humanity. And we deserve that. Thank you.